Imagine closing your eyes in the dead of a Mississippi night, only to hear them. Voices rising from a barn chain like a tomb, pleading, accusing, as if the earth itself is confessing buried sins. What if those whispers aren't ghosts, but echoes of divine wrath, waiting for one soul to finally listen? Tonight, we unlock the terror that gripped a farm, and a man's eternal guilt. In the sweltering haze of 1858 Mississippi, where the Mississippi River coiled like a serpent through the red clay heartland, the Hendrick farm sprawled under a sky that seemed perpetually bruised by thunderheads. 7 miles from Natchez, in Adams County, the land was a patchwork of cotton fields that drank the sun's fury by day and exhaled a humid breath by night. The air hung heavy with the scent of loamy soil, blooming magnolias, and the faint, acrid tang of sweat-soaked labor. Lanterns flickered in distant windows like wary eyes, and the cicada's relentless chorus masked deeper, unspoken fears. This was a place where faith and folklore intertwined, where Baptist sermons on Sunday mornings warned of hellfire, and midnight tales whispered of spirits that refused the grave. The barn stood as a sentinel on the property's edge, 200 yards from the main house, its timber frame hewn from ancient oaks that had witnessed the land's bloody history. Weathered planks, splintered and scarred by decades of storms, gleamed faintly under moonlight, their grain twisted like veins in a tormented body. The doors, once a vibrant crimson symbolizing prosperity, had faded to a rusty hue, evoking dried blood on altar stones. But it wasn't the age that drew the eye, it was the iron padlock, massive and unyielding, its keyhole a black void. Wrapped around it, a chain thick as a hangman's rope looped through the handles multiple times, bolted into the frame with rivets that screamed permanence. No farmer locked a barn this way, not for tools rusted from use, not for livestock lowing in the dark, not for hay bales stacked like forgotten prayers. This was a seal against something unholy, a barrier forged in fear, as if the very structure housed a judgment from above. Thomas Garrett, the overseer, had arrived on the Hendrick farm 3 years prior, a sturdy man in his mid-30s with calloused hands and a gaze sharpened by years of managing men and earth. His cottage nestled near the main house, a modest structure of whitewashed boards, its tin roof pattering under rain like anxious fingers. Inside, a single oil lamp cast long shadows on walls papered with faded scripture verses, reminders of a God who watched all. Garrett's life was one of routine, dawn patrols of the fields, tallying yields in a leather-bound ledger, ensuring the dozen field hands, enslaved souls bound to the soil, met quotas under the blistering sun. He was no stranger to the South's harsh rhythms, but nothing prepared him for the day the barn transformed from storage to sepulchre. It was June 9, a date etched in his memory like a biblical verse. The morning air shimmered with heat, mirages dancing over the cotton rows like deceptive spirits. Mr. Henry Hendrick emerged from the house, his silhouette tall and gaunt against the rising sun, clad in a linen shirt stained with the day's impending toil. Hendrick was a man of 50, his face lined like cracked parchment, eyes shadowed by secrets that seemed to weigh him down like chains. He rarely ventured to the fields, preferring the seclusion of his study where ledgers and letters piled like accusations. But that day, he strode with purpose, his boots crunching the gravel path. "Garrett," he called, voice low and gravelly, carrying the weight of unspoken commands. "Clear the barn. Everything out, the plows, the scythes, the seed sacks. Move it all to the new shed behind the house." Garrett paused, wiping sweat from his brow with a rag that smelled of earth and toil. "Sir? The old barn's sturdy enough. What's the trouble?" Hendrick's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something dark, guilt? Fear, crossing his features like a shadow. "No questions. Just do it." The work consumed 2 grueling days. Garrett and 3 hands, strong-backed men whose skin bore the scars of whips and sun, hauled the contents under Hendrick's vigilant watch. He stood in the doorway like a guardian angel turned warden, arms folded, his presence a silent pressure. Dust. Motes swirled in the shafts of light piercing the roof gaps, illuminating rusted tools that clanged like funeral bells as they were carried out. The barn's interior, once cluttered with the artifacts of farm life, echoed emptily now, the hay-scented air turning stale. When the last item was removed, a weathered feed trough splintered at the edges, Hendrick entered alone. His footsteps reverberated off the bare walls, a hollow thud-thud that seemed to pulse with dread. Emerging, he fixed Garrett with a stare that chilled despite the heat. "No one goes near it. Not for shelter, not for curiosity. Understand? It's forbidden." The padlock appeared at dawn the next day, glinting mockingly in the early light, the chain rattling as Hendrik secured it himself. Whispers spread among the hands like wildfire through dry grass. In the quarters at night, under the dim glow of tallow candles, they spoke in hushed tones laced with African rhythms and Christian hymns. "That barn's got a curse," one murmured, eyes wide. "Old sins don't die easy." But the cotton fields demanded attention, bowls burst white under the sun, indifferent to human mysteries. Weeks passed in uneasy silence. The barn loomed, a silent accusation against the horizon. Garrett tried to ignore it, focusing on mending fences that snaked like veins across the land. But doubt gnawed at him, a spiritual unease that echoed sermons on hidden transgressions. Then, on July 23, the veil tore. Garrett retired early to his cottage, body aching from the day's labor, the air thick with the scent of impending rain. Sleep came fitfully, dreams fragmented by shadows. What roused him wasn't thunder or wind, it was a melody, soft and haunting, drifting through the open window like incense from a forbidden rite. Low voices, harmonizing in a cadence that spoke of shared suffering, words indistinct but infused with sorrow. It wasn't the raucous songs of the fields, this was intimate, sacred, like a congregation in prayer. Heart pounding, Garrett rose, bare feet cold on the plank floor. Moonlight spilled through the panes, casting silvery patterns that danced like ethereal spirits. Peering out, he saw the barn silhouetted against the star-pricked sky, the padlock a dark sentinel. The singing emanated from within, clear as if the walls were mere illusions. Boots on, he stepped into the night. The grass whispered underfoot, damp with dew, the air alive with fireflies blinking like lost souls. Crickets fell silent as he approached, as if respecting the unearthly chorus. Closer now, the voices swelled, multiple timbres, male and female, weaving a tapestry of lament. He pressed an ear to the door, would rough against his skin, but the singing ceased abruptly, leaving only his ragged breath. Retreating, he paused at his threshold. The melody resumed, mocking his departure. From that night, the voices became a nocturnal ritual, as predictable as the tide yet infused with divine unpredictability. Garrett began a vigil, logging dates in his ledger's margins with a quill that trembled slightly. Not every evening, sometimes silence reigned for days, a merciful reprieve, but often, as twilight bled into blackness, they emerged. Variations haunted him, not always song, but conversations murmuring like confessions in a confessional, words teasing at comprehension but slipping away. Cries pierced the dark, keening wails that evoked biblical mourning, Job's anguish or Rachel weeping for her children. Laughter echoed twice, hollow and mirthless, worse than sobs, suggesting a madness born of eternal torment. Always confined to night's embrace, as if sunlight banished the spectral. Hendrik never addressed it. In weekly meetings, amid discussions of harvest timelines, Garrett ventured, "Sir, the barn, those sounds." Hendrik's quill scratched uninterrupted. "Focus on the cotton. Mark it by mid-September." His voice was steel, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of dread, a man wrestling with his own demons. "The Hand's whispers grew bolder, infused with spiritual lore. Samuel, a lifelong soul on the farm, graying at the temples, spoke of ancestral tales under the quarter's thatched roofs. "My grandmother warned of this land," he said, voice low, crossing himself. Before the plows, a plague swept through a family of travelers, stricken, buried hasty in the woods. Unmarked graves breed unrest. This ain't natural, it's judgment, sins rising like Lazarus, but twisted. 3 hands vanished by month's end, slipping away under cover of night, possessions bundled like fleeing Israelites. Hendrik replaced them stoically, but the air thickened with unease. What anchored Garrett wasn't loyalty, but a profound conviction. These voices were a summons, a divine missive echoing Proverbs' warnings of hidden sins revealed. They carried purpose, a spiritual urgency, as if the barn housed echoes of retribution, pleading for acknowledgement. He took to sitting on his porch after dusk, pipe smoke curling like incense, listening as one might to a prophet's oracle. The sound stirred empathy, a shared human frailty, and dread, a fear that ignoring them invited personal damnation. Martha Hendrik, Henry's wife of 23 years, embodied quiet resilience. At 42, her frame was wiry from managing the household with martial precision, her hands scarred from kitchen labors and lost children. 3 infants buried in the family plot, tiny crosses weathered by rain, testified to her grief. Fevers had claimed neighbors, but she endured, her faith a shield of iron. The main house, a two-story affair of clapboard and verandas, overlooked the fields like a watchful patriarch. Her bedroom window faced east, toward dawn's promise, but night's acoustics betrayed secrets. Sounds carried across the flatland, voices infiltrating her dreams like intrusive spirits. She observed Henry's decline, his face hollowing, hands quivering as he poured evening brandy in his study, lined with leather tomes on agriculture and theology. The room's air was thick with tobacco and unspoken burdens, a crucifix on the wall casting judgmental shadows. One August morning, as heat waves distorted the treeline, she confronted him over breakfast. Porcelain clinked softly, the scent of biscuits and gravy mingling with tension. "Henry, the barn, it's eating at you." "Add us." His fork paused, eyes meeting hers with weary finality. "It's my cross, Martha. Not yours to bear." The words hung like a veil, a marital lock as secure as the barn's. She knew the boundaries of their union, places where pressing invited fracture. Yet she watched. Each night at 9 sharp, as the grandfather clock chimed like a tolling bell, Henry retrieved the key from a chain nestled against his chest, warm from his skin. No lantern, he navigated by memory, slipping into the barn like a penitent entering confession. 15 minutes, timed by her pocket watch, then emergence, relocking with ritualistic care, testing the chain twice as if doubting its fidelity. From behind lace curtains, she observed, heart aching with empathy and curiosity. What vigil did he keep? What sin demanded such nocturnal atonement? Biblical echoes haunted her, David's hidden transgressions, the psalmist's cry for mercy. Was this divine justice, a haunting legacy of past wrongs, or a psychological torment symbolizing unredeemed guilt? As summer waned, the farm's spiritual chill deepened. Cotton bowls swelled, promising bounty, but an undercurrent of dread poisoned the air. Travelers on the nearby road slowed, horses nickering uneasily, riders glancing at the barn with crossed fingers. Whispers in Natchez taverns painted Hendrik as a man cursed, his property a site of otherworldly penance. Garrett's letters to his sister in Louisiana grew cryptic, laced with scripture, "The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground," quoting Genesis, hinting at buried atrocities. Into this cauldron arrived Jonathan Hayes in September, a journalist from New Orleans, his arrival as subtle as a serpent's glide. Tall and urbane, with wire-rimmed spectacles and a notebook perpetually at hand, he lodged at the Parker Inn, its creaking floors echoing his footsteps. Posing as chronicler of Delta innovations, crop rotations, irrigation marvels, he dined in public rooms, savoring gumbo scented with bay leaves, engaging locals with polished charm. But his true quarry stemmed from an anonymous July letter, terse lines about voices in a locked barn, postmarked Natchez. Its starkness intrigued, devoid of melodrama, suggesting authenticity amid a sea of sensational claims. Natchez's tight-knit society embraced the affable stranger. Invitations flowed, dinners in columned mansions where silver gleamed under chandeliers, church socials with hymns soaring like pleas for salvation. Hayes navigated conversations deftly, avoiding direct queries on Hendrik. Instead, amid talks of yields and soil, the name surfaced organically. He noted silences, the pregnant pauses, averted gazes, tones laced with guarded neutrality. Secrets festered here, protected by communal fear or complicity. Fate or orchestration brought him to Garrett at the general store, shelves laden with bolts of calico and sacks of flour. Casual banter led to tavern drinks, whiskey amber in glasses under low-hanging lamps. "Heard whispers about your employer's land," Hayes ventured, voice casual. Garrett stiffened, eyes sharpening. "Whispers? The kind that hint at mysteries." Silence stretched, broken by Garrett's sigh. "Stay in town tonight? Meet at the crossroads, midnight. See for yourself." Hayes complied, arriving early under an overcast sky that smothered stars. Darkness enveloped him like a shroud, mosquitoes whining like accusing voices. He perched on a log, senses attuned to the night's symphony, rustling leaves, distant owl hoots. Garrett materialized at midnight, phantom-like. "Follow." Quiet. They crept along the fence, shadows merging with trees, until the barn loomed a monolithic shape in the gloom. "Wait," Garrett breathed. Time crawled, Hayes's watch glowed faintly, 12:15, 12:30. Doubt crept in, but then a woman's voice sliced the air, clear and piercing, words elusive. A man's reply followed, then a chorus, overlapping in urgent dialogue. Hayes's skin prickled, the sounds rang unobstructed, as if the barn were an amphitheater for the damned. 5, 6 voices, perhaps more, rising in waves of emotion. "Lord have mercy," Hayes whispered. "Watch," Garrett urged. Then, illumination, a ethereal glow from a high window, not flickering flame but steady, unearthly white, like heavenly light or infernal judgment. The barn's details sharpened, splintered boards, protruding nails like thorns in a crown. Voices hushed, the light held 30 heartbeats, then vanished. Silence reclaimed the night. "Every night, or near," Garrett murmured. "Hendrik denies it." They lingered, but no encore. "Back at the road," Garrett pressed, "you'll expose this?" Hayes pondered. "Need corroboration, history." "Won't find it." Fear silences tongues. "Then why me?" Garrett's eyes gleamed. "Because evil unchecked spreads like plague. My time here's ending, I won't carry this stain." Hayes delved deeper over 3 weeks, scouring county records and dusty archives where sunlight filtered through grimy windows. Deeds from 1823 showed clean transfers, no disputes, the land a blank slate, or so documents claimed. Church ledgers noted Hendrik's dutiful attendance, donations precise as tithes. No scandals, yet an absence spoke volumes. Turning to the enslaved, Hayes treaded carefully, interrogation risked reprisal. At the market, amid stalls fragrant with spices and produce, he approached Diana, a house servant selecting candles, their waxy scent mingling with her quiet dignity. "Heard of peculiarities on the farm," he murmured. Her grip tightened. "Ain't my place." "The barn," voices. Pity softened her gaze. "Some locks hold in horrors." "Leave it, lest you unleash what's bound." She fled, leaving Hayes with a chill. The barn is prison for sins, a symbol of divine containment. As autumn leaves began to turn, tinged with blood-red hues, the farm's haunting deepened. Garrett's logs filled with patterns, voices peaking on moonless nights, as if darkness amplified spiritual echoes. Martha's vigils from her window grew obsessive, her prayers fervent for redemption. Hendrik's ritual persisted, a nightly pilgrimage suggesting a soul trapped in purgatory, offering penance to unseen judges. The land itself seemed complicit, winds howled through cracks like accusatory whispers, shadows lengthened unnaturally. Whispers in Natchez evolved to tales of biblical retribution, perhaps a hidden murder, a betrayal echoing Cain's curse. Hayes, notebook brimming with fragments, sensed a larger tapestry, not mere ghosts, but a moral reckoning, the barn a vessel for divine justice, where past wrongs demanded eternal witness. The voices, in their rhythmic persistence, evoked psalms of lament, a chorus of the oppressed or the damned. Empathy swelled in listeners, a pull toward understanding human frailty mingled with dread of personal implication. What if ignoring them invited one's own sins to surface? The barn stood as monument to unredeemed guilt, its lock a fragile barrier against spiritual flood. In this Mississippi crucible, where slavery's chains mirrored the barns, themes of justice and redemption loomed large, haunting not just the night, but the soul's deepest recesses. Jonathan Hayes returned to his investigations with a dogged persistence, the humid air of Natchez clinging to his clothes like an unwelcome embrace. Days blurred into a montage of dusty roads and wary faces, the sun beating down on cotton fields that stretched like white seas under a relentless blue sky. He approached field workers under the guise of casual conversation, their bent backs glistening with sweat as they plucked bolls with rhythmic precision, hands calloused and scarred like ancient bark. "Heard anything peculiar round the barn?" he'd murmur, but responses came as deflections, eyes darting to the ground, mutters about work left undone, or outright silence that hung heavier than the midday heat. House staff at the Hendrik Manor averted gazes behind starched aprons, their footsteps quick on polished floors that creaked like confessions. Even the local blacksmith, hammering iron in a forge that belched sparks and smoke scented with charred metal, shook his head mid-strike, anvil ringing like a tolling bell. "Ain't my place to speak on Mr. Hendrik's affairs," he'd grunt, the denial laced with a fear that flickered in his eyes like embers. Undeterred, Hayes pressed on, his notebook filling with fragments, sketches of the barn's silhouette at dusk, notes on the padlock's gleam under moonlight. The town's rhythm pulsed around him, horse-drawn carts rumbling over rutted paths, church bells pealing hymns of salvation, the distant hum of riverboats on the Mississippi carrying echoes of commerce and chains. It was in this tapestry of Southern life, where biblical morality clashed with the institution of slavery, that he encountered Cyrus. The old man, weathered as the oak shading the slave quarters, sat on a weathered stump mending a basket. His hands, gnarled like twisted roots, wove reeds with deliberate grace, the fibers whispering as they intertwined. Age had bent him 70 years under the sun's judgment, but his eyes held the sharp gleam of one who'd witnessed the land's sins unfold. The quarters themselves were humble, rows of clapboard shacks with dirt floors, roofs patched with mossy shingles, air thick with the scent of wood smoke and stew simmering over open fires. Children played nearby in the dust, their laughter a fleeting innocence against the backdrop of bondage. "Mind if I join you?" Hayes asked, voice pitched low to blend with the afternoon's languid hum. Cyrus glanced up, appraising him with a gaze that pierced like a preacher's sermon. "Free country, for some," he replied dryly, shrugging one shoulder. Hayes lowered himself to the ground, the earth warm and gritty beneath him, and watched in silence as Cyrus worked. The basket took shape slowly, a symbol of patient endurance amid chaos. Minutes stretched, filled only by the rustle of reeds and distant bird calls, until Hayes ventured, "You've seen this land change over the years." Cyrus chuckled, a raspy sound like dry leaves in wind. "Change? That's one way to call it. Born here when it was wild, before the big house rose like a monument to greed." The old man's voice carried the cadence of oral histories, laced with spiritual undertones, evoking tales of exodus and promised lands denied. Hayes leaned in, sensing an opening. "The barn, folks whisper about it." Cyrus's hands paused briefly, then resumed, but his tone shifted, weighted with caution. "Figured you'd circle to that, journalist from New Orleans pokin' round town. Thought you'd find me sooner or later." Hayes met his gaze steadily. "Will you share what you know?" Cyrus set the basket aside, leaning back against the rough wall of the quarters, its wood splintered and etched with years of rain. "What I know is you oughta pack up, scribble your piece on cotton kings and river yields, and hightail back to your city lights. Some shadows ain't meant for outsiders." But Hayes persisted, his voice firm yet empathetic. "I can't. Not when wrong clings to this place like a curse." Cyrus interrupted, eyes narrowing. "Wrong's everywhere, son, worlds built on it. But most wrongs stay buried, lest they drag you down too." Yet Hayes pressed, revealing he'd heard the voices himself, that ethereal chorus slicing through the night like a divine accusation. Cyrus stilled completely, the basket forgotten. "You've heard M? Then you're deeper in the pit than wise." He sighed, a sound heavy with resignation, as if yielding to a higher calling. "Fine. Dance with the devil if you must. I ain't got the full gospel truth, but I'll testify what I've seen." Shifting for comfort, his back against the wall like a confessor in a makeshift booth, Cyrus wove his tale. "Started in June, like Garrett likely told ya. But rewind a month, Mr. Hendrick lit out for Mobile, claimin' business. Gone nigh 2 weeks. Returned under cover of night, not alone." Hayes's pulse quickened, the air seeming to thicken with anticipation. "Who came with him?" Cyrus's eyes darkened, shadowed by memories. "That's the thorn. No one laid eyes on him, her, them souls. But a wagon rolled up, canvas tarp hidin' the bed, Hendrick drivin' solo, no hands aidin'. Pulled straight to the barn in moonless dark. He vanished inside with whatever burden it carried, hours tickin' by. Emerged alone, wagon empty as a grave. Next morn, the lock appeared, chain like Judas's silver. Then the voices singin', argin', weepin', as if hell's choir rehearsed. Farm turned to a quiet inferno, polite on the surface, wrought tin below." Hayes absorbed the words, the spiritual chill settling in his bones. "What's locked in there?" Cyrus resumed weaving, fingers steady but voice laced with omen. "Wrong question, young man. Ain't what, it's who. And deeper, why ain't they fled? Ghosts are flesh, they're bound by something mightier than iron, maybe sin's chains, divine retribution holden. Till Judgment Day." The old man's words evoked biblical parallels, souls trapped like the rich man in Hades, crying out for mercy across the chasm. Hayes felt a surge of dread mixed with curiosity, a journalistic fire ignited by the moral abyss. Professional duty called. This was no mere anomaly but a narrative of hidden atrocities, a story that could expose the South's underbelly. Yet personally, it gnawed at him, that woman's voice from the night vigil, not raging but resigned, like a psalm of lament for the oppressed. Someone or someone's languished in that barn, their cries a plea for redemption, echoing the spiritual torment of unredeemed guilt. Emboldened, Hayes resolved to confront Hendrick directly. The main house loomed like a patriarchal sentinel, its verandas draped in wisteria that dangled like hanging vines of judgment. Inside, the study was a sanctum of dark wood panels polished to a sheen, shelves lined with leather-bound volumes on agronomy and scripture, the air redolent with pipe tobacco and aged paper, a faint undernote of desperation. Hendrick awaited behind his desk, tall and emaciated, his frame suggesting a man fasting for atonement. Deep-set eyes peered through Hayes like a confessor discerning sin, skin sallow under the lamplight that cast elongated shadows, evoking elongated crosses on Calvary. "Mr. Hayes," Hendrick intoned, voice measured, no handshake offered a barrier as firm as the barn's lock. "Expected you. Small towns hoard secrets poorly." He gestured to a chair, the wood creaking under Hayes as he sat. "You've queried my property. Let's skip charades. What do you seek?" The bluntness disarmed Hayes momentarily, but he rallied. "What's in the barn?" Hendrick's face remained impassive, a mask of stoic resolve. "Nothing for you." The voices begged differ, nightly choruses, lights flaring like heavenly signs. Hendrick leaned back, fingers steepled like a prayer. "Trespassing, then?" "Public road, sir." "Sounds carry like gospel hymns, half-a mile on still nights. Yet no outcry, no sheriffs?" Hendrick's gaze hardened. "Discretion, not fear. Private affair on my soil, harm to none." Hayes pressed, empathy warring with indignation. "Distress echoes clear, people suffering." Hendrick cut in, voice sharp as a reaper's blade. "People? Seen 'em? Witnessed chains, blood, crime?" Hayes faltered, the spiritual weight pressing. "Heard enough." Hendrick rose, ending the rite. "Advice, your story's smoke. Pen cotton tales, river lore. This path leads nowhere satisfying. Why?" For a flicker, weariness cracked Hendrick's facade like a soul burdened by Proverbs' hidden sins. Explanations fail outsiders. No tidy resolutions, only lesser evils. You lack full truth and won't pry it from me. From whom, then? Hendrick opened the door, lamplight spilling like spilled blood. No one. Return to New Orleans, emptiness awaits here. Hayes rose but lingered. If I publish regardless? Hendrick's tone flattened, prophetic. A ghost yarn disbelieved, altering naught. Barn stays sealed, voices persist. Your justice illusions. Exiting, Hayes glanced back, Hendrick framed in the window, a silhouette trapped in his own web, not guardian but prisoner. The distinction resonated, perhaps Hendrick's lot was self-imposed penance, a divine sentence for unspoken transgressions. October ushered cooler breezes, leaves turning amber like flames of purgatory, the air crisp with harvest scents, ripe cotton, wood smoke, earth yielding its bounty. Yet the barn's pattern shifted, noted first by Garrett on his porch vigil, pipe glowing like a vigil candle. October 7th, voices erupted post-sunset, sky bruised purple gold, louder, fractious arguments slicing the twilight, overlapping in desperate cacophony. Garrett froze, the sounds penetrating like thorns, evoking spiritual discord, demons debating souls. Hours dragged, silence descending heavy as judgment's gavel. 2 nights hence, weeping assailed, sustained, soul-rending sobs that clawed at sanity, biblical lamentations like Jeremiah's tears. Garrett paced his cottage, walls closing in, the cries infiltrating like accusatory spirits. At 3 a.m., Hendrick emerged from the house, steps labored as if bearing the world's sins, unlocking the barn in moonlit ritual. An hour inside, emerging, shoulders convulsing in silent sobs, face streaked as if baptized in grief. Voices hushed, but the air thrummed with unresolved tension. 3 days later, Samuel vanished. Morning muster empty, quarters intact, shirt on nail, bowl pristine like rapture's selective call. Search parties combed woods, fields, roads, nothing. Noon revealed horror. Samuel sprawled in cotton rows, half-mile from barn, supine under merciless sky. No wounds, eyes wide in terror mingled with epiphany, as if beholding divine truth too raw. Doctor decreed heart failure, happens in labor's heat, but Samuel was 34, morn cool. Burial swift in the plot, cross crude, but the farm's spirit fractured, 2 more hands fled. Garrett eyeing November 15, Vicksburg's promise at exodus from plague. Voices evolved, warnings now, prophetic utterances like revelation seals breaking. Garrett discerned, the barn's captives weren't mere victims but instruments of purpose, divine agents of retribution, bound till sins confessed. Mid-October, Hayes in New Orleans, bustling streets alive with French Quarter jazz, river scents of mud and commerce, received a second missive. Cramped script, hasty as a fugitive's note, for Barnes' riddle, probe mobile, April 1858. State Street auction. Special sale. Staring at the paper, Hayes felt the pull, a tether to unfinished judgment. His prior article spiked as sensational vapor, lacking witnesses, proof. But this anchored it, not spectral, but tangible evil, slavery's marketplace, where souls auction like chattel. Booking passage, Hayes sailed to Mobile, Gulf winds whipping sails like avenging angels. The auction house on State Street masqueraded respectability, brick facade, columns stately, windows tall, but reeked of moral decay, air thick with despair's residue. Approaching as investor proxy, Hayes met manager Will Cox, florid-faced Floridian, ledger in hand. April sales? Cox flipped pages, eyes calculating. Several. Specifics? Heard of a special, unusual. Cox hesitated, then, 23rd, private estate liquidation. Specialized property, literate, multilingual, French fluent. Valuable, but tricky, buyers wary of sharp minds in servitude. Cold dread coiled in Hayes. How many? 7, from New Orleans household. Owner's sudden death forced settlement. The words hung like a noose. Educated slaves, perhaps tutors or clerks, sold in secrecy. Hayes envisioned the scene, dim hall, bidders in shadows, chains clinking like betrayed promises. This was the barn's genesis, souls trafficked, locked in retribution's vault, their voices a chorus demanding justice, echoing biblical cries for freedom from Pharaoh's yoke. As Hayes pieced the mosaic, spiritual symbolism deepened, the barn as Ark of Covenant turned tomb, housing the oppressed till divine flood cleansed the guilty. Empathy surged, for the voices, symbols of human dignity crushed, dread for Hendrick, perhaps the auction's architect, now jailer to his own damnation. The farm's legacy chilled, a haunting of moral reckoning, where sin's chains bound all, awaiting redemption's key. The auction house on State Street in Mobile stood as a monument to calculated cruelty, its brick facade painted crisp white to mimic respectability, tall columns casting long shadows like bars across the entrance. Inside, the air was thick with the metallic tang of fierce sweat, the low murmur of bids, and the rustle of papers that sealed human fates. Will Cox, the manager, a portly man with a florid face and eyes that appraised value like livestock, flipped through his ledger under the dim glow of oil lamps. The pages crackled, yellowed edges frayed from countless transactions in April 1858. Hayes, posing as a Louisiana planter's agent, had laid $20 on the scarred oak desk, a bribe disguised as research expense. Cox pocketed it with practiced nonchalance, turning the book so Hayes could read. 7 names listed from one New Orleans estate, a household liquidated after the sudden death of their owner, Madame Beaumont, a woman known for her project of elevating select enslaved children through education. Light-skinned, bright-eyed, capable of learning French, English, mathematics, music, literature, they had been groomed as demonstrations of civilization's reach within bondage. The heirs, burdened by debts and uninterested in upkeep, dispersed them swiftly. 6 sold to different buyers across Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, planters seeking skilled labor or house servants. Respectable, documented, legal. But beside the 7th, Marie, 24, house-trained, literate, French speaker, only one entry, purchased by H. Hendrick, Natchez. Special terms. Special terms? Hayes echoed, voice steady despite the churn in his gut. Cox shifted, uncomfortable under the scrutiny. Premium for discretion. Mr. Hendrick paid extra to keep it quiet. Took delivery himself, no agent. Unusual, but not unheard of. He closed the ledger with a soft thud. Pretty girl, well-mannered. Seemed resigned. Educated ones sometimes get notions, but she didn't fuss. Hayes felt nausea rise like bile. 7 raised as near family in a cultured New Orleans home, siblings in spirit if not blood, scattered like seeds on infertile soil. Separation was standard, market preferred individuals over units, families diminished value, complicated sales. Profit over sentiment, as Cox had shrugged. Yet one buyer had claimed Marie personally, driven her back to Natchez under cover of night. And the voices Hayes had heard, 5-6 distinct timbres, suggested more than one soul confined. The arithmetic refused to align with mere coincidence. He departed Mobile on the next steamer, the Mississippi's brown waters churning like his thoughts. Gulf breezes carried salt and regret, riverbanks blurred past, dotted with cotton fields where enslaved figures bent under the sun like supplicants in eternal penance. Arriving in Natchez on October 25, Hayes bypassed the inn, heading straight to Garrett's cottage. The overseer opened the door, face etched with foreknowledge. "You found it," Garrett said, not a question. They sat at the rough pine table, lamplight flickering across Garrett's account book. Hayes recounted the auction, the 7, Marie's singular notation. But the voices, multiple. It can't be just her. Garrett opened his ledger to June 15, the day after the barn was sealed. 7 new field hands arrived. Hendrick claimed replacements for runaways. No surnames, just firsts. I noted it routine. He slid the page over. The names matched fragments Hayes had gleaned: Thomas, Louise, Jacques, others. He bought them back. Tracked every purchaser, paid premiums, double, triple perhaps. Bankrupted himself likely. Why? Hayes whispered, the question hanging like smoke. Garrett's eyes darkened with dawning horror. Their family again. Only at night, in that barn. Daytime, they labor apart, fields, rows, never acknowledging. I've seen it, a man and woman in the same line, eyes averted, movements uncoordinated like strangers. But come dark, locked together, no witnesses, no overseer. Singing hymns of their shared past, arguing over lost years, weeping for what was stolen, laughing in fleeting joy. The only life permitted. The revelation struck Hayes like divine thunder. Not supernatural torment, but human-engineered purgatory. Hendrick's mercy a cruel facsimile, reuniting them, yet denying open kinship. Day's pretense preserved hierarchy, enslaved as individuals, productivity unhindered. Night's confinement granted intimacy, but under lock and chain, a reminder of bondage's permanence. Biblical echoes resounded, Pharaoh's hardened heart, families torn in exile, yet here the oppressor played God, doling mercy laced with retribution. Was this atonement for a forbidden love? Or the ultimate cruelty, giving what was craved most, then caging it? Silence enveloped the cottage, broken only by distant cicadas and the barn's faint, anticipatory hush. I'm gone November 15th, Garrett said. Vicksburg calls. This stain. I won't carry it. I need their truth, Hayes insisted. To hear from them. Impossible. Hendrick guards like Cerberus. Silence is their shield. Then I enter the barn. Tonight. Garrett stared, incredulous. Madness. He'll kill you, or worse, arrest you. Without their voice, the story dies. Help me. After long pause, Garrett relented. North side loose board, warped low. 18 inches. Squeeze through after his 9 o'clock visit. Voices start near 10 o'clock, cover your noise. Fool's errand, but, go. Moonless night cloaked the farm in velvet black, cool air scented with dew-soaked cotton and distant wood smoke. Hayes watched Hendrick's ritual, key from chest chain, door unlocked, 15 minutes inside, emerge, relock, test chain, retreat to house like a man fleeing judgment. At 9:45, Hayes approached. The barn loomed, timber frame exhaling aged wood and hay ghosts. He located the gap, 3 planks bowed outward, splinters sharp. Squeezing through scraped skin, dirt floor cold against palms. Inside, pitch dark, no lamp risked. He lay still, breath ragged, heart a drum and ribs. Voices ceased abruptly. Someone's here, a woman's voice, refined, accented, cut the silence. I smell him, a man replied. Not Master's cologne. Different. Hayes rose slowly. Please, no harm. I want understanding. I'm white, yes. Journalist. Heard your voices. Spoken to Hendrik. Then leave, a younger female urged. White men seeking understanding bring chains, not freedom. I'm investigating. Help me see. Movement rustled, bare feet on dirt, bodies shifting into protective circle. Tension thick as fog. You want truth? Marie's voice strong, steel-edged. Listen once. Interrupt not. My name is Marie among us. Other names given by owners, lost in sales. But here, Marie. We were raised in Beaumont House, New Orleans. Madame collected us light-skinned, quick learners. Educated us, languages, sums, music, books. Her project, proof slaves could mimic civilization. Guests marveled, we performed. But we were family, siblings in soul. Laughter in lessons, comfort in nights. A man, Jacques, continued, we knew bondage, but had each other. Then April, Madame died. Heirs scattered us. One day, auction. 5 minutes goodbye. Thomas to Alabama, Louise Baton Rouge, me Georgia, Sarah, 15, Mobile. Thought forever parted. Marie, I arrived here first. 3 days later, Thomas appeared. Then others, one by one. All 7, on this farm. How? Hayes breathed. He bought us back, Marie said softly. Tracked, negotiated, paid fortunes. Bankrupted perhaps. But he did. Why? Silence stretched, heavy with unspoken pain. Because he fell in love with me, Marie whispered. Mobile auction he inspected. Not as property. Asked what I read, thought, desired. I said, my family. He promised, whatever cost, he'd reunite us. And he kept it. Jacques, 6 weeks, purchases, transports. We arrived secret. Day labor separate. Night, barn. Our only freedom. Hayes felt the moral abyss yawn. Hendrik's act, born of passion, twisted into torment. Love for Marie compelled reunion, yet slavery's laws forbade open family. So he crafted this, daytime division to maintain order, nighttime confinement as gift. Mercy corrupted, intimacy granted, yet surveilled, chained. Divine retribution loomed, sin of ownership repaid in self-inflicted exile, nightly penance listening at the door? Or psychological prison, guilt manifesting as ritual? The voices resumed softly, humming a hymn, low and mournful, threads of French and English weaving lament. Hayes slipped out before dawn, heart heavy with empathy for the 7, dread for Hendrik's soul. The barn's legacy, not haunted structure, but living testament to bondage's cruelty, where love itself became a chain, awaiting heavenly justice to break it. The barn's interior enveloped Hayes in a suffocating blackness, the air thick with the earthy scent of packed dirt and aged timber, faint traces of sweat and whispered secrets lingering like incense in a forbidden chapel. Splinters from the warped boards clung to his coat, tiny pricks reminding him of the thorns in a crown of suffering. The voices had fallen silent upon his intrusion, but now they encircled him, 7 presences, their breaths sinking in a rhythm of guarded unity, like a congregation wary of an interloper at their altar. Marie's words resumed, her voice a melodic anchor, refined yet laced with the steel of endurance, echoing biblical resilience amid trials. So why the barn? Why the lock, the separation by day? Hayes asked, his whisper cutting the dark like a hesitant prayer. A new timbre emerged, Louise, perhaps, calm and measured, carrying the weight of unspoken truths. Because revelation would unravel everything. A white planter bankrupting himself to reunite 7 educated slaves? Whispers would twist it, illicit schemes, forbidden desires, abolitionist plots brewing in shadows. Society's gaze would condemn, laws would lash out. But the core? Simpler, yet a labyrinth of the soul, he promised Marie, and he's no monster, merely ensnared. Trapped? Hayes echoed, the word hanging heavy. By his realm, Marie replied, her tone softening like a psalm of lament. Expectations chain him, customs, statutes declaring me mere chattel, not beloved. Manumission? Mississippi forbids it without rare cause we lack. Equality in light? Ruin his name, invite irons for all. Open family? Questions swarm like locusts. So he forged this pact with perdition, daylight slaves, toiling apart, eyes averted, bonds invisible as ghosts. We plow rows side by side yet as strangers, hearts screaming silent pleas. But nightfall, he seals us here. Hours of humanity, dialogues flow like rivers, songs rise as offerings, memories of New Orleans' gilded cage revived. We dream futures. Scripted in stars, narrate lives unbound. Family reborn, if only till cockcrow. Tears traced Hayes's cheeks, unseen in the void, a baptism of empathy. The barn's walls seemed to pulse, symbols of confinement mirroring spiritual prisons, souls bound by sin's legacy, yearning for redemption's key. The sobs we've heard, Marie continued, belong to Sarah, our youngest. The facade fractures her day's denial, dawn's parting. Jacques spins tales to soothe, weaving calm from chaos. Arguments? Debates on flight, risk northbound paths, or perish captured. 7 marked by learning, hounds would hunt us swift. Laughter? Genuine sparks amid ashes, joy defying despair. We love, we endure as vessels of the divine image, not commodities. The hush descended sacred, a tabernacle of shared suffering. What of this knowledge? Marie queried. Will you ink our tale? Hayes pondered, his editor craving tidy morals, New Orleans salons dissecting scandals, a world blind to a man's sacrificial love warped by slavery's curse. Uncertain, he confessed. What do you desire? Depart, Marie urged. Seal your lips. We're no parlor anecdote. Exposure invites ruined probes, resales scattering us eternally. Hendrik probed, we dispersed to merciless hands. Spare us, our shadowed nights, our barn sanctum, our fragile kin. It's no paradise, but our ark in the flood. Hayes nodded into obscurity, a vow felt if unseen. I pledge. Slipping out, voices resumed, murmurs of affection, a gentle tide. He trudged to town, gathered belongings scented with river mist, boarded the dawn steamer. The story died unborn. Garrett departed November 15, boots crunching frost-kissed gravel, Vicksburg's horizon a promised land. Queries on his exit met vague deflections, personal crosses, silence veiling the barn's specter. Hayes resumed Delta Chronicles, river commerce's ebb flow, cotton's white gold empire, innovations etched in ledgers. Acclaim followed, reprints in gaslit parlors. Natchez faded, unspoken. The barn endured, padlock glinting under moons, chain a serpent coiled. Late 1858 into 1859, wayfarers slowed horses, ears pricked to nocturnal choruses, legends birthed in taverns, ghost yarns for wide-eyed young. No sheriff stirred, no scribes probed. The 7 navigated duality, sunlit laborers, faces masked in indifference, moonlit brethren, souls bared in ritual. Hendrik's vigil persisted, 9 o'clock chime, keys cold bite, brief ingress to verify, relock with trembling hands. A penitent's rite, perhaps atoning for love's transgression, divine retribution in nightly echoes. War's thunder rolled in 1862, federal ironclads slicing the Mississippi like judgment's blade. Natchez yielded September, bluecoats occupying without clash. Confederacy crumbled, old orders fracturing like clay idols. Hendrik's acres faltered, fields barren, harvests lost to chaos, currency dust. Owner-slave lines blurred in famine's grip. Yet the barn stood sealed even as Yankees encamped, boots trampling sacred ground, as pneumonia racked Hendrik, bedridden in fevered delirium, as Garrett's successor fled with pilfered silver. Voices persisted, defiant psalms against apocalypse. April 14, 1865, Lee's surrender news ignited Natchez like holy fire. War's end, Confederacy's fall and slavery's chains shattered, emancipation's dawn breaking like manna from heaven. On Hendrik's soil, a Union writer proclaimed liberty, free to labor for coin or wander unbound. Most scattered swift, northward pilgrims, kinseekers in Natchez's throne, wanderers into unknown. But 7 lingered, shadows in the fields. That eve, Hendrik approached, aged 63, frame bent as a willow in storm. No brief visit, padlock unclasped, chain unraveled like sin's bonds loosed, cast to dirt. He retreated wordless, house lights dimming like a soul's final vigil. Doors gaped open, 7 years' seal broken. Marie framed the threshold, starlight silvering her form. Behind, Thomas sturdy, Louise wise, Jacques storyteller, Sarah matured, Daniel pragmatic, Ruth fierce. Air crisp with freedom's chill, fireflies dancing like liberated spirits. We can flee, Thomas urged. World ours. Where? Sarah queried, voice steady now. North Washington, New York, Daniel proposed. With empty pockets? Skills untried? Louise countered. Stay, earn wages, familiar ground, Jacques offered. Here? Where chains defined us? Ruth recoiled. Debate swirled hour-long, voices cresting in honest discord, love's forge tempering resolve. Marie interceded, we could part, free paths, individual dawns. The notion hovered, a temptation like Eden's fruit. Your wish? Thomas pressed. Marie reflected, 7 years nocturnes, hymns harmonized, griefs shared, joys kindled in captivity's crucible. Proof of endurance, divine grace in suffering. No, she declared. Never. Then united, Jacques affirmed. Split brief for sustenance, but reconvene. New lives, scars as badges. Affirmations echoed, a covenant sealed. Their inaugural free night, no barn's embrace. Fire kindled outside, flames leaping like triumphant hallelujahs. They conversed till sunrise, blueprints of hope unfurling under vast sky, family unmasked, no lock sparring. Morning, they strode the road together, barn doors ajar behind, a portal to rebirth. Hendrik lingered 3 years post-war, lands auctioned for debts, retaining house and scant acres. No crops, no hands, solitude his penance. Barn vacant, doors splayed, weathering time's erosion. Neighbors whispered nocturnal voices, from fields, woods, ether. Legends proliferated, cursed earth, spectral penance. Truth plainer, echoes silenced, souls frighting elsewhere. Hendrik passed September 1868, slumber's quiet claim, alone in ancestral halls. No testament, no kin, farm sold, barn raised 1869, timbers reborn is shed. Unremarked, routine. Yet demolition, carving in doorframe, knife-etched, dawn's secrecy. We were here. No signatures, dates, just assertion. Frames salvaged for quality, words enduring in shed till 1891 blaze consumed. By then, witnesses dust. 1932, historian Eleanora Price chronicled Adams County, elders' war tales. A 94-year-old recounted maternal lore, locked barn's nightly chorus. The barn folk? Price inquired. Left post-war, together, rode own stride. Fate unknown. Price noted, marginalia, verify. Unpursued legends haze blending fact, fancy. Voices of 1858 Mississippi persist in oral chains, hand-passed memories, morphing like rivers. History's essence, not ledgers, but chosen recollections. 7 sundered, reconvened, endured impossibility, liberated. Certainties amid voids. Details, motives, soul's depths unrecorded, bridging archive and myth. Echoes from vanished barn, presences insisting audibility, defying erasure. Barn span 1858 to 1869, records attest. Voices, gatherings, testimonial shards, hearsay, memories whisper when history averts. Vital narratives often unwritten, proof and persistent murmurs, decades postparting. Sometimes, midnight's hush yields echoes, voices refusing oblivion, testament to divine persistence in human frailty. The farm's red clay, now overgrown with kudzu vines twisting like serpents in Eden, holds no visible scars. Yet beneath, roots of ancient oaks delve deep, drawing from soil enriched by sweat and silent prayers. Travelers pausing at the old crossroads might sense it, a spiritual residue, like the afterglow of a vigil candle extinguished but warm. The air carries a faint, inexplicable harmony on windless nights, as if the land itself recites psalms of redemption. Hendrick's house, weathered to a skeletal frame by Reconstruction's tempests, became a way station for freedmen in the 1870s, its verandas sagging under new burdens. Stories circulated, a gaunt figure haunting the study, quill in hand, scribbling confessions never mailed. Divine justice, perhaps guilt's eternal scribe, atoning for love's misbegotten mercy. The seven's paths diverged yet intertwined, Marie and Sarah to New Orleans, reclaiming education in freed schools, teaching alphabets as keys to liberty. Thomas and Jacques northward, laboring rails that stitched a fractured nation, sending wages south. Louise, Daniel, Ruth and Natchez, forging communities from Emancipation's ashes, churches rising where quarters stood, hymns echoing barns' choruses. Reunions marked calendars, annual pilgrimages to neutral grounds, picnics under live oaks dripping Spanish moss, recounting barn years not as torment but forge. God's anvil, Marie termed it, shaping resilience from fire. Biblical parallels abounded, Joseph's brethren reunited post-betrayal, or the Israelites' wilderness forging before Canaan. War's chaos amplified their tale's spiritual chill, as cannons thundered, barn voices swelled in defiance, a chorus against apocalypse. Federal occupation brought blue-clad angels, their proclamations like prophetic scrolls unrolled. Hendrick's final act, chains discard, mirrored Peter's denial reversed, a quiet redemption in defeat. Postbellum South grappled with ghosts, lynchings shadows, sharecroppings chains disguised. Yet the seven embodied hope, living epistles of perseverance, there we were here a carved creed against forgetting. Price's 1932 notes, yellowed in archives, spark occasional scholars' curiosity. One, in 1950s, traced descendants, a Harlem poet claiming Marie's lineage, versus echoing nocturnal songs, a civil rights marcher invoking Barnes' unity. Spiritual legacy, sins of separation redeemed in collective memory, divine retribution yielding to grace. Mississippi's horizon swallows suns as before, but the Barnes site now a subdivision's edge, whispers. Children playing unearthed rusted chain links, pondering origins. Elders spin yarns, listen close, voices of the bound, singing freedom's dawn. Thus, the story endures, a spiritually chilling tapestry, guilt's lock, love's key, justice's slow turn. In empty spaces, echoes persist, humanity's insistence on being heard, divine echo in mortal strife.